Hello everyone. First of all, I'd like to say thank you so very much for all the lovely kind comments that you've posted on the internet to me, and thank you for all of you who gave us a thumbs up and subscribed to the channel because it's really helpful. So that's a big thank you to all of you. If you remember last time we made the little stocking bone shape for a dog. Well, today we're going to make one for the cats. It's a fish and it has a pocket on the top, a tab to hang with, and you can fill it up with all the little goodies for the cats. So get your Christmas fabrics all together and we'll get started. I made mine in Christmas frosty sparkle fabric, but that was because I had the fabric. However, it doesn't film quite so well. You might get a shadow on it, so I've used a bit plainer fabric so it's easier for you to see. So I've just chosen a gold for the main fish body and a red spot for the pocket. The fins I have cut to shape. All the pattern, the pattern has all the template sizes and for you to cut out ready. So there's 2 pieces for each fin and a piece of binding that goes across the bottom, which is just a 2.5-inch strip by about 8 or 9 inches. For the eye, I have just cut out a little piece of, oops daisy, the paper's come off that one. I had some red fabric with some sticky backed applique fabric paper on the top, and then I found these little tiny wobbly eyes, so I have put one on there just to make it a little bit more realistic, and then there will just be a loop that goes on the top. I haven't decided at this point whether the loop will be red or whether it will be gold. It will probably be red. So that's what you need, plus you will need 2 pieces of very lightweight wadding, one in the pocket size and one in the main fish size, and that's what you'll need to get started with. The first step is to cut the template for the fins out, right sides together. I'm going to leave the curve and stitch the inner curve, I should say, that fits onto the body, and we're going to stitch 1/4 inch across there and across the bottom of the fin. Now that fin, I'll use this one, is going to go in between the layers on the top and on the bottom. So that's the first thing, right sides together. We will stitch along there and along there, and then I'll come back and show you the next step. What I should have also added is that you will need, these are little cutouts. The pattern is, the template is on the pattern, but these are just for the scales. I've done mine in green because I happen to have this piece of green and had some applique paper already ironed onto the back of it, so I've just traced that shape and cut out some. You will need 6 of those. You don't have to do them in green, you can do them in any colour you like, but I just thought that makes them look a bit more like a fish. So I forgot to tell you that, I am sorry. So I've clipped the curve on my fin. I just snipped it with a little pair of scissors, so it gives it a nice finish. So just carefully cut little snips all the way around so that when you come to turn it inside out, you'll turn it to the right side. The curve will actually be really nice and rounded. I've done this one to show you, and that will go, nice curve now, that will go between the layers of the body of the fish and the pocket. So you get those 2 ready. And the next step is for you to do cut out your applique pieces and iron them on. Now you can, if you choose, you can sew the pocket right sides together with the wadding. The wadding must go in on one side, it has to go that rough side down. Pin it. You can pin it and stitch it on, or you can actually just start to sew, applique your pieces on before you do that. It's up to you which way you do it. I have done it both ways. in the past and both work equally well. I just open it up after I've sewn it. That was because I wasn't sure about the 1/4 inch seam, how far these pieces needed to come down. So I'm now going to iron on 6 of these and stitch them on to one side of the pocket. To make it easier, when you apply your applique, I've put one side of the pocket onto the piece of wadding. Now that's the rough side, the soft side is underneath, and I put that next onto the back of the fabric, because when the needle punches in and out, if you've got that very fluffy side and just directly under your fabric, it will bring up the threads of the wadding through the top fabric. So I'm going to take the paper off of the back of all my little scales, position them, iron them on, and then I'm going to applique them on using a very tiny zigzag stitch. You can use a buttonhole stitch, but I use a zigzag stitch, very tiny one, because it's lasts a lot longer, it's much hardier. And I'm then going to stitch them on through here, the top fabric, and through the wadding. That's my next move. My scales are all stitched on. It's gone right through the wadding, and I used a piece of baking paper obviously underneath to slide it round easily on the bed of the sewing machine. The next step is there's going to be a 1/4 inch seam around here, of course, so we're going to lay the other piece right sides together, and I'm going to pin round the top edge there. And there. Stay there. And I'm now going to stitch that curve on the top, 1/4 inch seam from there to there. I'm going to back stitch on both sides, and then when I've done that, I'm going to trim back the little piece of wadding up to the seam line and snip like we did for the curves on here. So I've stitched around the top and trimmed it back and clipped. Now I want to put the fin in on that side, but I can't, because it's got such a nice curve. I don't want to be sewing one curve one way and one curve the other way. So what I'm going to do is I've marked the width of the length rather of the fin. I'm going to stitch to that point, start stitching again there to the bottom, leave that bottom seam open, stitch up here to this point, and then from that point to the top. And then I will clip the curves, turn it inside out. Once I've turned it to the right side, I will then press the 1/4 inch seam in a nice curve there, slip the fin in on the right side, and that will be the pocket top finished. I turned this to the right side, and I have turned under, I've clipped the curves to keep them nice and rounded. So you can see I've just turned under my 1/4 inch seam, made it nice and curved, and slipped in my fin, so that will slip in there. I've just managed to pull that piece out, and I'll top stitch just around here. I will stitch this piece to the main body of the fish, so I can go over the same line when I do that. So make sure that's nice and neat on the other side, you can see, and that will come around on the back like that. So that's exactly, just pop that in again. Be very careful, but take your time with it. I've now managed to pull mine out, but I haven't pinned it in yet, but that's how it will go. And that will make, if I turn that round, that will make your top fin. Both fins have been stitched in. It's neat on the back. And the next step, I will put this to one side. Just put that on there. The next step is making the loop. I've chosen to make my loop out of red. So it is a 2.5 inch strip. Now you can cut it, I mean, this is 8 or 10 inches long. It doesn't matter how long it is, because you can always trim it back. So your 2.5 inch strip, you fold it in half, open it up, press it into the center, press the other raw edge into the center, and then fold it in half again. And we're going to stitch 1/8 of an inch down each edge. 1/8 of an inch, and then that will form the loop, which will be the next thing that we will be positioning. This is my tag, stitched 1/8 of an inch down each side. Now I fold it in half. Now we want to end up with the tag coming out and sitting like so, but to do that we've got to stitch it so it drops on the inside while we have the wadding and the right sides together of the fish body. So we'll pull it a little bit out because I've got too much there. You need roughly around 3 inches. So I'm going to stitch the tag onto that because it must come up at the point where the fish is, I'll call it the nose. I don't know if they have noses, but I'll call it the nose. It needs to be there. So we're going to pin that on the inside. And I'm just going to stitch around there within the seam allowance. I'm not going to go outside of the seam allowance so that you can see the red stitching on the top. So I'm just going to stitch that to the top there at that angle that you can see there, this angle just there, and make sure that's on the inside so it doesn't catch in any of your seams when you put the back together. So I've got the fish shape wadding, wrong side. I've got, remember the wadding that you're stitching onto, keep the rougher side underneath your fabric. I mean, it will be on the other side. It doesn't really matter for a border seam, but when you're stitching something and top stitching, you don't want this fluffy side next to your needle. So I'm going to put the other shape on the top, pin those together, and then what I will do, I'll pin it all the way around. I'll use a 1/4 inch seam, leaving this bottom edge open. Do not stitch across the bottom edge. Remember, you've left this one open. You must also leave this one open. So I'm going to stitch a 1/4 of an inch all the way around. Now making sure that my tag is on the inside here, and I will pin that securely so it keeps straight. I've turned it to the right side, and I did trim the wadding, the lightweight wadding, back to the seam line, just leaving a little tiny bit there. It just makes it less bulky when you come to do it. So you've got your nice tag on the top, which you're going to catch in with some top stitching again. And now all that remains to be done is for us to place this on here. Now you might find you have to ease it in. I'm just going to pin that on there, line up the bottoms and the curves, because it forms a pocket. Whoops. So it forms a little pocket. So don't worry if it sits a little bit up on the top, just line the back ones up and pin them. Just bring them into line and pin them in, and then we're going to stitch. Now we're not going to stitch this piece yet because this is gold. I'm going to stitch this in yellow with a gold bobbin underneath, bobbin thread underneath, so that it looks neater on the back. So I'm going to stitch this top piece to this one here, starting here and down to the bottom, starting there and down to the bottom, which will actually come up. Not start that way, I'll come start here and finish just there. So that's what I'm going to do next. I've stitched it on. Now I've used red thread on the top there and gold on the bobbin because I wanted it to sit nicely and look nice. So you can see it just lines up. You ease it a little bit and it lines up really nicely. So I've stitched that, and also because this is gold and gold on the back, I've also top stitched 1/8 of an inch around this top piece as well. So while I had my red thread on, I actually ironed my little eye on and put my little wobbly eye on the top of that. So now all we're left to do is to put a piece of binding on the bottom. I'm going to turn it over, just snip that off, that little piece off there. so we don't get red thread showing. The binding needs to go on the wrong side first, so I'm going to pin the binding on the edge. I'm going to stitch along. Now I've got gold top and bottom now, and then I will iron it over and turn it over. I'm going to stitch this first and then I'll come back and show you when I turn it over. So this is the back now. We've just stitched on the piece of binding there. Press it well out with your thumbs and fingers. Turn it over. Now that's at an angle, so you've got, because it goes out at that angle, you need to have an angle coming the opposite way, a diagonal. I'm actually going to snip a little piece off there, and on the other side. Now I've left about an inch on either end, just a little bit off there, and I'm going to turn this in at the bottom here and bring that up. I'll tuck that piece under. Now you need to take your time with this and be a little bit careful when you stitch it down. Just going to pin it on there so you can see that side is done. That will be our stitch line. I'm going to do the same this end. Get that right in. Turn this piece over. Tuck that right in again. I'll just pop a little pin in there. As you stitch along, of course, you can use your little pointer if you've got one, just to stitch it along. So I'm going to stitch now on this edge here, all the way along, and when we turn it over, it will come out just on the edge of this on the back, so it will look really neat. I've put the binding piece on the bottom, and it's gone really nicely on the back there too, and all nice and neat. And so that's our fish Christmas stocking, Kitty's Christmas stocking, finished. This was the first one I made, so I've got a few little bits and pieces in there, show you that you can get quite a bit in it. It's not very big, but you can get quite a bit in it. So if you like this pattern, it's in my Etsy shop, so go along and have a look at it. And I'll try and get one more video in before Christmas, but if I don't, then I would like to wish everybody a very happy Christmas. But I would just like to say thank you. Please give us a thumbs up, like and subscribe, and then I'll be back next time with another project. So it's bye for now, and I'll see you next time.